Ring ring, it's time for another episode of Crossplay Conversations, the show where we dive deep into the world of video games while keeping it light. I'm your host, Luke Lewis, and today I am joined by my wife, the expert of the underwater explorers, Claire Lewis.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good, how are you?
It's going good. I am doing good. I appreciate the dive deep. I know that is something that we say all the time, but it's
very fitting today. This is true. We are here doing a special Just You and Me episode because we're talking about Subnautica 2, very near and dear to your heart, one of your favorite series in gaming. But yeah, we just wanted to dive right into it, quite literally. It's been a minute since the game launched into early access in May, but you've had a chance to beat the game. Yes. You've played a ton of it, so we'll be diving into kind of your overall history with the franchise, your thoughts on this recent release, diving into how it stacks up in terms of the early access world. Are you excited for future content? What do you want to see? We'll get into the weeds. So for folks that are big fans of the Subnautica series, this is a great episode for you. For folks like me that are maybe more dabblers in the series but curious how this new one's shaping up, we'll have discussion for you. And for folks that are like, what the heck is Subnautica? We'll get into all of that as well. But without further ado, Claire, I feel like we need to set the stage and establish your credentials, because you're very qualified to be reviewing Subnautica 2, so you want to chat about kind of how you found the franchise and your history with the past couple games leading into the much highly anticipated sequel.
For sure. So I loved the original Subnautica game. You actually bought it for yourself, and I watched you play, and I was like, ooh, what's this? And then I was just immediately hooked, kind of like what happened with Stardew Valley, where I was just like, oh, this is my thing now. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. Played the first game probably about 6 times all the way through, start to finish, on every single console that except for I haven't played it on PC, but I played it on PlayStation, I played it on Xbox, I've played it on Switch multiple times. Just absolutely obsessed with this game. It fits. It checks all my boxes. A open world survival, crafting, exploring game. Very heavy on the exploration. Very light on the quests. Combat, not a thing. Very much having the little je ne sais quoi that I love to see in all the games of there is a mystery. Something has happened here. You have to figure out what happened here. And it's very, like, the narrative is very much embedded in how you interact with the world. I love games that do that, and it's because of Subnautica.
Yeah.
I've also played Below Zero like 3 different times. It was like a DLC,
standalone,
but then it became like a standalone game that in my mind was just a sequel.
Sure.
And then now, of course, we have the actual sequel. Subnautica 2 has just come out. I've been looking forward to this game for a very long time, and there was a moment there where it was kind of looking like it might not happen. So I'm very excited that we're here. The game has been released. I have played it. There's no feelings of guilt around playing it because of how the things wrapped up with the legal battle that I'm sure most people have heard at least a little bit about, whether or not you're a Subnautica super fan like me, who was following every single news beat the whole time, trying to figure out what this was going to mean for the game.
That's the funny thing, is I feel like I've spent, as someone who just like follows the industry and enjoys, keeping up on daily news and reading ongoing sagas in terms of this legal battle with Crafton and the dev team Unknown Worlds, obviously. We won't get into the whole dispute here, but if you want to do a deep dive, gamesindustry.biz did a ton of... I keep saying that, not intentionally, but it's just happening. Gamesindustry.biz did a really great job of reporting on the drama throughout the entire lead up to early access launch, so I'll link that in the show notes below. But... And
they actually have a complete timeline of events that I really appreciated looking through before recording this. Because, I kind of remembered how everything unfolded, but a lot of the reporting that's happening now has very much a lot of, like, hindsight lens, where it's like, well, now we know this is what happened, but at the time, there's a lot of things that we did not know. And the gamesindustry.biz timeline says, like, this is what we knew at this time, and then adds the information, so you can kind of have the context for just kind of remembering how it felt, at the time. There was a moment when all of this started where I was like, oh no, are the people who made these games that I love up to some shady shit? No,
sure.
Are these the bad guys? Because that's how it was that's how Crafton framed it. Before they even were terminated, they were already kind of running they were running a narrative, which we now know ChatGPT told them to. So, that it was a lot. It was a roller coaster trying to follow this news and just know what was going to happen with the people who have created this game that I love, and then also what was going to happen with the sequel that I was looking forward to playing.
Sure.
And that millions of people were looking forward to playing. This is the I think second most wishlisted game on Steam. Subnautica 2 is. So it is just
I think it
very
was, leading into this launch, it was number one because Hollow Knight Silksong had come out. So it was this was the kind of the white whale unicorn game of the industry, so to speak, of when is this dropping, what is happening, will it come out. I think that segues us into talking about the last two major beats on this timeline that we're discussing from gamesindustry.biz that'll segue us into talking about early access launch and getting into your impressions. But in March 16th, 2026 of this year, former CEO Ted Gill was reinstated as CEO and given an extended deadline for Subnautica 2's performance to result in their $250 million payout to September 15th, 2026. So then, next day, Crafton unceremoniously announces the early access release date for May in defiance of the court's decision to return control to Ted. So that just 48-hour period was crazy in the news, and in this lead up to May 14th, I was very much in the camp of is this actually going to come out? Is this really going to come out? And I think being in the PR world and seeing press releases go up regularly every day, it's pretty common to see a delay announcement shortly before a launch, especially for a highly anticipated title with this. And there was so much legal back and forth going out that I didn't really think it was going to launch here.
The ouster of the CEO and original creators is the big thing of anyone would understand if this of Gill being reinstated would result in a development delay as he checked in on the project and looked to see, how things had progressed while he was gone and what needed to be done before the release, and then start making a plan for announcing it to the public and marketing it and setting the date. And instead Crafton is just evil villain this whole time, just scheming. The game was originally, they said you have to have it out by the end of 2025 if you want to get your bonus, and then all of this shit happened and they delayed it to 2026, and now Crafton said, oh, you got your way, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna say this is the date it's coming out, so that either you have to look like you're actually unprepared, which is a bad look for you, CEO Ted Gill, or you have to stick to it and maybe actually be unprepared and not have enough time. Because that's, less than 2 months from him being reinstated to the day that it actually launched.
There was no way for us to know, general consumer, where the team was at, how things were going, without the founders in place, if they were still on track, how it was going. That brings us to launch day. The game sells like gangbusters in the first 24 hours. Yeah. It's one of the best-selling games of the year so far. Let's just get right into your overall impressions. How's the early access build? How much did you play? How long did it take you to complete? How you're feeling about it? Top level.
For sure.
And we won't, for this part of the discussion, we won't get into spoilers. Discovery and spoilers and whatnot. I'll defer to you what is considered a spoiler for this discussion, but... safe to say we'll keep it pretty top level impressions for this first part for sure.
So I'll just say as a disclaimer, I haven't touched any of the co-op stuff, multiplayer, so that's something that I'm not super familiar with, but I did play the entire, all that's available in early access, start to finish. It took me about 24 hours to do. There were also some things that I was doing that you don't necessarily need to do if you just want to kind of straight shot the mission, where I was doing a lot of base building, and we'll talk about this later, but I prefer to play my Subnautica games vegetarian, which means I will not eat or drink the fish, which adds an extra layer of it takes time to figure out, in each game, to figure out what you need to do to get water without drinking the fish that's full of water. if you don't do that, it'll probably take you a lot less time to get going than it took me, because there are water fish everywhere as soon as you start the game. I think the first noticeable big difference was like, this game looks so good.
Truly.
When you go back and you play Subnautica or Below Zero, and especially because the last time I played both of those games was on the Switch versus now I was playing on Xbox. It just, the resolution is so impressive, and you can toggle, like many games have the option to now, between a lower frame rate and higher visual fidelity, or higher frame rate, lower visual fidelity. I played on higher frame rate because I did switch over after noticing that was an option that you could do, and I actually really did notice the lower frame rate made it just it was kind of wonky. So, but I mean, it was still so visually beautiful. What the things that they done with the lighting, the textures have a lot more detail. The colors are very different. You get the sense that this really is a different planet, even though it has similar vibes to Subnautica and Below Zero. It is set on a different world with entirely different characters in the same universe. So obviously the flora and fauna that we are seeing is entirely different. Whereas with Below Zero, there was a lot of overlap where you could see, oh, these are two fish that are just in different regions, look a little bit different, kind of different skins on the fish.
Sure.
There are, like I said, lots of new cool fish. I think that the vibe is great. I do miss my peepers. You know, I'm sad that we didn't get to go back to 4546B again. Gotta love that planet with all of its many issues, but I really do like these new environments that they have, and the kind of freedom to have all these different fish and anemones and things. There's also a lot of new added elements and tech that kind of look different, feel kind of the same, work mostly the same, but it's like everything just got a little bit upgraded, especially in terms of like the base building, just the way that that has evolved is really excellent to see, especially because there's a lot of other games that do base building that like could take a page out of Subnautica's book. Just the first Subnautica, having it evolve into what it is now, it was very cool to mess around without getting too much into the details. Loved the exploration elements. I'm trying to figure out how much I can say without getting into spoilers.
Well, let me ask a couple follow-up questions, because you're
follow-ups.
throwing out a ton of awesome information. I'm curious, just looking at the scope of like early access games in general, you know, that games can often fall into that pitfall of, or a game launches into early access and it is considered content light, and so folks hold off on playing until 1.0, or there's key features that are still being fleshed out and experimented with until that 1.0. But then we have games that, you know, I think of Manor Lords as a recent example where it's like, wow, there was a lot to that early access build and a lot to really love there, and based on all your time with it, you've seemed very positive on it, but I'm curious, like, in the overall scope of content, do you feel like you had a complete experience? Was there like key gameplay things lacking? Is there more story to unfold that you're waiting to discover when 1.0 launches? And I know they've put out statements about their roadmap and whatnot, but I'm curious just about like your sentiment of what you played.
So that's a really great question, getting into the early access conversation. This is not a demo. I played this game for 24 hours.
Sure.
It is also not a complete game.
Sure.
I never played the early access Subnautica or Below Zero. I just played the full release version of both of those, so I don't know firsthand what the evolution of those games was, but I do know from all the time spent on the forums, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, that there was a lot of evolution in between both of those versions of both of those previous games. There were things that were added, there were things that were changed about the story and about the environments that were added, and so I can't say firsthand whether this is like less content than it relative to what the full release will be, but the game is not complete. There is a point you can reach where it's in the story where it says that's all we got for now. like the screen flashes like you have reached the end of the narrative at this point. There will be more added later. Like the entire story is not available to play in the game. Gotcha. And then there are also these walls in the game. They appear as like these orange gates, kind of, like a force field as you approach it that says this is the end of the early access area. If you proceed, don't proceed. You can
Sure.
go through the barrier, and when you do, you get 8.
Okay.
Real fast.
Narratively speaking, they even kind of tie
so
it in.
in Subnautica and Below Zero, you reach the point where and it's described in the story as like you are living in this pocket of the ocean where life thrives, and then it gets real deep. There's trenches. There's no life there except for the leviathans that eat you. So if you reach this point in the game and you just keep going, you will eventually get eaten. And that's just how the end of the world works in the previous Subnautica games. That's not what this is, and I have seen there is a point in Subnautica 2, there is one part where you can get to this is the end of the world, I can tell, because all the stuff goes away, and it just drops, and then there's a Leviathan out there. But for the rest of it, it's very much, you can tell that the world is still being built beyond that, and that there are going to be other things you can do later in that direction. You can't go there right now. It's blocked off. So that makes me optimistic for things that are going to be added that they've said they're going to add later, other biomes, other areas. There's at least one other chapter, which in a Subnautica game, isn't super, like, they're not divided into chapters in super clear ways that you can feel.
I see what you mean. Could be open-ended.
Yeah, and I don't really know, like, what they're setting up as how long that next element is going to take. Is the early access build the first half of the game, the first third, the first quarter?
Sure.
The first 2/3? Is the next bit they haven't added the ending? Just like the climactic ending? I don't know.
Sure. Well, that's kind of exciting in a sense, but jumping back to all of the new elements that you touched on, the game taking place on a new planet, new biomes within that, new fish, new mechanics, are there things that you feel like are a direct improvement on from the previous games, or do you miss aspects of the previous games that aren't here currently that you think may be addressed in future updates? Curious to get your thoughts, and then I also want to segue into some kind of community discourse, because there's been a lot of that post-launch as well.
I think that when I first started, there were some changes, just some like little lore changes, that took some getting used to. This is set a not insignificant amount of time in the future from the Subnautica games. I think it's been several hundred years. And so the technology is advanced to the point where your character is just a meat sack that a consciousness has been uploaded into, and every time you die, you are getting reprinted, kind of like Journey to the Savage Planet. And then there's all these questions about, like, it's like a Theseus ship thing of, like, at what point are you no longer you? And there's a lot of, in the narrative, with which in a Subnautica game is just you're finding other people's journals.
Sure.
And the narrative is, like, exploring, like, what it means to be a human, and then, you know, the AI, is called a Noah, is a little robot that is in charge of, like, printing the bodies and telling them what to do and helping them navigate their situation, kind of like the PDA AI was in the previous games, except for this one definitely is more of a character, which is interesting. Cool. Instead of just being like a programmed device from the Altera company, this is like this. It has like a directive. And it might have like a consciousness, and that's a question too.
Okay.
And so as a printed meat sack, you also have like biomods where you can adapt your body to the environment. This is an aspect that they added to this game. It's like a skill tree almost, where as you play, you can unlock by playing the game. You can unlock different things that you can change about your meat sack. I'm gonna stop calling it that. To your body, so that you can. So I unlocked dash so that I can dash, which has been very helpful for escaping bad guys, big fish who want to eat me, and or you can like leave a little path, a wayfinding path for yourself to explore caves, so you can add these things. And then also the underlying narrative of this game, and this is just getting a little bit into the spoilers, is that there is this virus on this planet. Subnautica games love viruses. There's a virus on this planet, but there's also you are as a human allergic to the planet. You can't survive in it. It's slowly killing you over time. But there are these creatures that you can use to help your genetic code adapt to the planet in ways that can make actually living there viable. So you have to cure these creatures of the virus in order to use them, and that's the gameplay loop that was added that is a new, and it feels, I will say, very video game at this point of like, all right, you gotta cleanse this, and you gotta kill this thing, and you gotta shoot this thing, and you gotta upgrade this tool, and then you can go over here, and it just, that part felt, the gameplay loop felt a little bit like this is a video game, whereas previous Subnautica games were like, I'm exploring and chancing upon these different encounters that may or may not help me find things. So
okay.
It felt a little bit more like linear progression, which I think was interesting, and that's an element of discourse as well. There's also like a different way for like crafting and processing has been changed a little bit. Things that I feel like are really improved is I really like the base building and the way that there's a lot more versatility into what you can do. There's also elements that were in Below Zero that we don't have yet that I hope they add in, like glass ceilings, and there's no aquariums.
Just cosmetic things.
That's a spoiler, because I was waiting until the very end. I was like, am I eventually going to figure out how to make an aquarium? Not in the early access build, so if that's something you really need to have in order to feel happy in your Subnautica game is an aquarium in your base, you just wait for the full release, I guess, because there's no aquariums, which I thought was an oversight.
Interesting. Curious how this feeds...
And put them into little aquarium.
That sounds lovely.
Okay.
Curious how this feeds into the difficulty curve of the game. You mentioned you play it in vegetarian mode and not eating the fish.
That's not a real thing, just to be clear. It's not a real thing in the game. It's just a thing that sometimes people do.
Well, but that's part of a game like this, and I think that's like a core system of the and the devs recognize that sandbox survival element of this type of game. With that said, having played a decent chunk of the first one but not progressed very far, I found it pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like, I died a lot. Mm-hmm. I was playing on the default normal difficulty setting, and it wasn't that I was frustrated, but I found that it was like, oh, this is way more hardcore into the survival genre and managing your water and oxygen and these stats that I think are incredibly compelling, and the systems work really well. For me, that's just not something that, like, drives my passion in gaming. I liked the exploration, but I felt kind of limited by what I could explore given the survival elements, and that's not a criticism of the game. That's just like a personal preference thing.
That's how Subnautica works.
Right.
That's what drives the progression, and that's the nature of the Subnautica game that does feel different in this one that I was touching on. Is that in Subnautica 1, in the first game, you are kind of dropped in this planet, and aside from occasionally getting signals from other stranded life pods where you go and you find that the people there are all not dead, you are really just exploring, and what guides your progression through the game is I need to figure out how I can go deeper by expanding my oxygen tank, getting upgraded fins, getting a ship, like do all these things, and you're exploring these different areas, and it's very much the exploration rewards more. The reward is more exploration, but it is not always super clear what you're supposed to do, to the point where playing Subnautica and actually, like, progressing beating the game without, like, in a vacuum, not talking to anyone, not looking anything up online, just doing it, pretty much impossible. So, like, the first game, and this is very common, I know everybody else's experience too, is looking up guides, looking up maps that other people have created and posted online, looking at how do I get this thing, oh, I have to go and find this wreck that I didn't even know was there, because you can't really see it from that far away, you just have to know that you have to go there, or you have to really thoroughly explore the whole world, or, like, there's this whole narrative, in Subnautica, surrounding a previous crash that happened, or previous, like, survivors that were on the planet, and it's very much where you find this location, and then they say we're going in this direction, and so you have to go in that direction to find their next thing, and you don't have a compass to begin with in Subnautica, so if you haven't gotten a compass yet at that point, that's going to be challenging for you. Sure. You know what I mean? So that is the element of challenge of Subnautica, is you just have to explore and keep upgrading and really be dialed into what the game is telling you need to do next, and probably need to look at some guides also. I thought Below Zero did a really excellent job of making it easier to survive and easier to find things without needing a guide, but in a way that still felt like kind of natural, to the point where, like, at one point you're exploring in Below Zero and you find a map that someone has drawn of the world, and then you can use that map to kind of figure out how to get from point A to point B using your compass, that you still, once again, you have to get the compass in the first place. And to be clear, it's not like a UI map where it shows you where you are in the world. You find this artifact, and then you can reference it in your PDA, but it's not interactive. It doesn't show you where you are. It doesn't show you where any landmarks are. It's just very, very basic. You find the components that you need to make water earlier, and they are in more abundance in the starting area in Below Zero. And same with food. It's a little bit easier to just get started. You still have to really explore and really dive deep and explore all the nooks and crannies in order to find the tech that you need in order to progress through the narrative. Subnautica 2 really shows you what to do. I didn't need to look up a guide to finish. There was one moment where I thought I was going to have to, and then I backtracked a little bit, and I was like, I feel like I missed something. And sure enough, I had missed a point where it said, the thing that you need is right over there. And I was like, okay. And then I went over there, and there it was. Which in the moment, when I was like starting to get a little frustrated, was kind of nice. But something that I really appreciated about Subnautica 1 and Below Zero is that you just have to explore and see what you can find. The self-discovery piece. And the way that it just kind of felt like natural versus like this is a video game in Subnautica 2, where it's like the thing you need is over there, the next thing you're gonna need is over there, and then you start going in that, or like, we're under attack, we're gonna go this way, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go that way too. Oh, and now it's gonna tell me the thing that I need to do in order to get the next upgrade, in order to go to the next place, then I needed this other upgrade to be able to do this thing, and it just felt very linear, which was something that I know other people were disillusioned by, and I hope that maybe as they add things in the full release, it won't feel that way, because the world will be bigger and easier to explore, and there will be different things that you can do and find, to where it doesn't just feel like the game is pointing you in the right direction the whole time. If you played the first Subnautica game though and you didn't like that, and you wanted to be able to just tell me where to go, maybe you would like this better.
Interesting.
For me, I think Below Zero was the perfect middle ground. It helped you find what you needed without necessarily needing to rely on strangers on the internet, but it also still felt like you were discovering everything, and the world was also a little bit smaller, which helped too. Gotcha.
I'm curious, is it a spoiler to say what the, like, basic setup of Subnautica 2 is narratively? Like, the crux of the mystery?
A little bit. Everything I've said so far, I think, is early enough in the game that it's not a spoiler. There's, the human body is not designed to be able to, is incompatible with life on this planet because of the way, like, chemical components in the water and stuff. Like, you cannot live, and it's slowly killing you. And then there's also this virus that's, like, slowly killing everything. And so your job is to figure out how to survive on this planet and figure out what happened to the other members of the ship that has crashed on this planet that you're not supposed to be on.
So there's still a little bit of
there's a little bit mystery. Of curing the virus and figuring out what the virus is, and then there's a little bit of how to survive. There's a little bit of why did we crash here? This isn't where we're supposed to be. There's a lot of what happened to the previous survivors, and everything in the logs is like, this happened 250,000 hours ago. And I'm like, hours is a weird unit of measurement. I did the math and I was like, oh, this is like 200 years ago. These people were here about 200 Earth years ago. God knows what that means in terms of relativity.
Sure.
But that's a lot of time that has passed between they were there and no one was there, and then suddenly the player character's body has reprinted. Why did that happen? And then there's also this looming... I don't know if this is a spoiler. You can see it pretty much right away. There's this looming tree on the horizon that sticks out of the water. And you get to see how that had affected the previous survivors. And there are the like factions that developed. There's aliens, and there's a whole story around the aliens on this planet. And it goes deep. So I'm not gonna non-spoilers get into anything more than that.
Yeah,
but there's
totally
a lot
fair.
of lore. The way it connects to the previous game's lore is really interesting. There's a lot of like recorded dialogue and journals and stuff. It at times felt like a lot. So once again, I hope it's like an oversaturation because it's all in one place right now, and then things will spread out more in the full release. Because it does feel like a lot of PDAs
in terms
to find,
of
a lot of
pacing
dialogue.
okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
a lot of information.
Story-wise, is this something folks can jump into in this one? I know you said there are references to the earlier games. Are you losing significant touchstones and like understanding, or is this new setting enough to go on to still enjoy yourself?
I think that you can just jump right in because it's a new setting, it's a new story, it's a new group of characters, but there are references to the things that happened in the previous games.
Okay.
And some of these references were jarring to me. Can we get into spoilers now? Can we just make this from here on out, we're doing spoilers?
Yeah, we sure can. I wanted to get into a little bit about like the community discourse, but I guess that is kind of.
Ask me again later, then.
But the community discourse kind of feeds into general sentiment about the previous two games. So yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe make a closing statement for our new to Subnautica series listeners, and then we can jump into full spoilers.
At this point, if you have not played a Subnautica game before, I'm going to spoil what happens at the end of Subnautica 1. How about that?
That seems fair.
And if you don't want to know what happens at the end of Subnautica 1, skip forward about 1 minute.
Okay, fair enough.
At the end of Subnautica 1, there's this virus on 4546b, the planet in Subnautica 1 and Below Zero, that is like slowly killing everyone, including you. And the planet is quarantined by the aliens who used to live there, which means no one can land and no one can take off. You can't escape the planet unless you cure yourself and the planet of this disease. So you have to do that, and then you do. That's the end of Subnautica 1. You cure the planet, you cure the disease, you escape. Hooray! Robinson, what was his name? Something. Anyway, he escaped. In Subnautica 2, you learn that the Kara disease, which is the disease from that planet in Subnautica 1 and in Below Zero, has now infected all of space and humanity.
Oh, okay.
And basically is on the verge of wiping out humanity, if it hasn't already, because you don't know how long you've been not alive.
I see.
Everyone could be dead. You could be the last human on Earth. In the first, 2 or 4 hours, you find a log where it's like, if you're reading this, if you're listening to this, you might be the last human alive in the universe. Or you may not be. There's no way of knowing because we're so far away from everyone else. But yeah. I'm not going to spoil what happens in Below Zero because I don't need to, and I also, I think the thesis of this podcast for me, listeners and watchers, is that you should play Below Zero if you like Subnautica. If you like Subnautica 2, but wish there was more to play, and if you haven't played Below Zero, you should play Below Zero. That's the thesis.
Cool.
Yeah. If you have already played the Subnautica 2 early access build, or part or all of it, and you're just listening because you want to know what I think about it, you should play Below Zero. If you are waiting to play Subnautica 2 until it launches in full, guess what you can do in the meantime? Go play Below Zero. Below Zero is great. Everyone should play Below Zero. Subnautica 1 sold 10.3 million copies, not including free downloads. Below Zero, 3.5 million copies, about a third of that. Subnautica 2, early access, so far, 4.4 million copies. That means there's about 1 million people who are jumping straight to 2 without playing Below Zero, and you are missing out. That game is great. I love it so much. Subnautica Below Zero featured a player character with an actual human backstory that we got to know, who was like personally invested in what was going on, and these other characters that were no longer there, they all had like a relationship, and there are notes, and she's got pictures of her with her cat, and all this cute stuff. Cool tie-in where you actually meet another human person. That's a spoiler, sorry. That ties into the first game in Below Zero. That's pretty cool. Below Zero was great. You should play it.
Hell yeah.
Hell
Love
yeah.
That.
Back to Subnautica 2.
Couple more questions, because there's a lot to dig into here. Getting into community sentiment a little bit, we were talking about key differences between the previous games and the second one. Let's talk about combat and the survival knife and this big...
Happy to, I have
the
opinions.
big fish discourse
God,
of it all.
it's so stupid.
So for context, if you haven't been following it, shout out to you for staying off the internet. That's great.
How does the grass feel? I bet it feels nice.
I bet it feels amazing. All this to say, the discourse essentially was, and totally correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, but it was that in previous games you could kill large creatures, and now you cannot?
No.
Oh, I'm totally wrong. Okay,
No.
hit me with it.
You would think that based on the way people reacted
Sure.
to the inability to kill large creatures.
Okay.
You've never been able to kill large creatures in this
Oh,
game.
okay.
That's never been a thing. You have
And people are upset you can't do it in
you
2,
have been able to
specifically.
catch small fish that were
Yes.
small enough to catch and eat them.
Okay,
Which, if you play vegetarian, you don't do, just on principle.
sure.
You were pretty much unable to avoid hitting those small ships or small creatures and killing them with your ship when you were zooming around in your sea moth or your cyclops or your sea truck, because if you struck a fish while you hit it, it was dead. The little blood would, if there was a bigger fish, the little blood would hit out. Like, I'm talking like a medium-sized fish, like the sawtooth or whatever, or
Sure.
the like manatee-looking ones. They didn't die usually, but they weren't happy. You could use your knife to deflect medium-sized fish to get them to go away if they were bothering you. Leviathan, you could shoot... I never really messed with the torpedoes, but I don't think you could kill them. You just deter them. You get them to go away. Or shoot beacons to get them to go away. Or use flares to get them to, like, not pay attention to you. So this argument that you should be able to kill the fish in Subnautica 2 makes no sense to me. You've never been able to kill the big fish. That's the whole point. The whole point is you are here on this planet trying to survive. You're not trying to take over. You're not trying to colonize. Subnautica 2, you might be kind of trying to colonize. But you're not trying to change the flora and the fauna. You are trying to survive and get out.
And there's
Has
nothing
always
like
been a thing.
Far Cry adjacent where you're taking fish scales and using them to craft X, Y, or Z. Or is that
You
a
need
thing?
organic components to craft, but you do not need to kill fish in order to get them.
Okay.
That's never been a thing.
Sure.
You need sawtooth teeth in order to make enameled glass. You get it by giving them metal that they like to play with, and then they chomp on it and their teeth fall out and you pick up their teeth. This is a very similar element in Subnautica 2 with a different type of fish that also has the teeth. There's the bladderfish in 1 and Below Zero, and then there's like these little sea slugs in Subnautica 2 where they're full of water, so you can consume them in order to get water. I don't do that because I don't want to eat the fish. That's the thing that's the vegetarian playthrough. You do not consume the fish. Unfortunately, I did discover through my vegetarian playthrough that there's a plant that I was harvesting in order to survive, and the glowing orange orb in the middle of the plant is technically an alive creature with a heartbeat and a consciousness, which I didn't realize at first. So I actually was not successful on my... And that's the Discord that's not talked about enough. Previously in the game, you've been able to play through the game without intentionally consuming any of the creatures. And I'm pretty sure you can't do that in Subnautica 2 because you need that orb creature in order to make rubber, and I don't think you can make rubber any other way.
Interesting. Okay. Curious... You've brought this up a couple times, but this vegetarian mode that you're like intentionally doing.
It's not a mode. It's just a thing. I know I'm not the only one who does it.
Well, no, it's a mode in terms of it's a mindset. Yeah.
It's a mindset.
But
it makes the gameplay a little bit more challenging.
Sure.
Which is why I started doing it in more recent run-throughs of previous games, because I was like, I would like to see if I can do this.
So was this just a community thing that kind of started as like everybody played it and they were like, how can we up the ante more or less, or like a challenge?
Yeah, it's just
mod in a sense. Okay, interesting.
That being said, there is an actual challenge mode where if you die, it's permadeath. If you die, you lose the game.
Have you messed with that at all or no?
I did once. I think people who play through the game that way are freaks affectionate. That's crazy. I did play through once, and I got like 2 hours in, and I was like, man, when I die, this is gonna suck. And then I did.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do that.
I mean, some people just really love that. I know I play like XCOM games or like more like turn-based strategy games where you have your squad and you're regularly like swapping in characters. Those are kind of fun to play with permadeath on, because then when a character dies, it's like, oh my god, I can't believe I lost so and so.
But for a game
you like
that
continue on with this emergent narrative.
For a game that takes
I don't
like
think
20-30 hours to complete.
That's next level. I would find that really stressful. But yeah, I was just curious.
But also, people can speedrun that game. Like, speedrunners could do it and maybe think that it was fun. Not me. The first time I played through Subnautica, I didn't have the proper equipment that I needed for the area that I was in, but I also didn't know that I didn't have the proper equipment, and literally I would be like, okay, I gotta read what this tablet says, so I'm going to park my ship here because this is as steep as it can go, and then I'm gonna go down, and I'm gonna read the tablet, and then I'm gonna die, and then I'll go down again and read the other one, and then I'll die. It's like,
oh my goodness.
Or like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna grab the stuff and I'm gonna die halfway back and I'm just gonna drop it, and then I only have to go this far in order to get the stuff back. Like, yeah.
Little strategy.
That
would have been impossible if you were trying to do the permanent. Yeah.
And then I later realized that I didn't have the equipment that I needed, and I just needed to upgrade some stuff. But like, once again, that was something that I discovered through playing the game a lot and also reading about it from other people, because it wasn't super obvious that was something I needed to do. And there's also like, when you're exploring wreckage, there's all these twists and turns where you could easily overlook something and not realize that was the thing you needed until you are like, crap, where was that? Look it up online. In Subnautica 2, there was a moment where there was something in a wreckage that I didn't notice the first time, and so I just went back through my logs and I was like, okay, I was in this place, and they literally say, the thing you need is over there, and I was like, it was just over there. So I went back and I found it because I realized I had overlooked it the first time, and I was like, well, that's a little disappointing. I wanted to struggle a little bit more.
With all that said, do you feel like, obviously the discourse is blown out of proportion in typical internet fashion, but do you feel like there's actually like any like valid feedback to the lack of combat?
Yes. So and that's what they're actually fixing.
Right.
The comment was, we should be able to kill the big fish because they are making it too difficult to play the game. And the fix is, you're right, the big fish are kind of bugged. We need to improve the big fish behavior. So we are going to do that. The answer is not to be able to kill the big fish.
Sure.
The answer is that when I use the sonic resonator on the big fish, it should go away for a little bit before it comes back. In a way that looks natural, not like it will just keep attacking you no matter what, even if you use the flares. Or it'll go away for 3 seconds and then come back. That's not great. Or there's one that they right after this discourse first started, they went in and they patched it. We're like, we'll make it so it stops attacking you, for at least a little bit. But then after that patch, the fish just like, kind of froze there,
sure.
And then was like, okay, back at it, instead of like swimming away and then circling back in a way that felt natural. So that was kind of fun. I was like, ooh, that's a little bit bugged. So they're actually working on real fixes to the creature behavior that will
that's cool.
Be a little bit easier to work with in those situations.
I saw a neat interview.
Like deterrence and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, too, because I saw a neat interview that Ben Hansen over at MidMax did with Anthony Gallegos, who used to work at IGN back in the day, but is also now the lead gameplay designer on Subnautica 2, and so they were chatting about this discourse as well, and his key point was about adding ways to deter the big enemies and adding ways to make the game fun and engaging within the context that still makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was quite interesting that the solution wasn't total pacifist mode, but it also wasn't here's big gun. Like, I always think of Another Crab's Treasure with their accessibility mode where you could just have a big gun and one-shot all the enemies, which was hilarious and awesome for the context of that game, but it's an interesting problem to solve.
This is not a combat game.
Sure.
And it never was, and that's part of why I love it.
Totally.
This is not a combat game, and it doesn't need a combat solution. It needs a survival solution. Yeah, I really love that. There was something else I was going to say when you said that. Oh, and the Leviathans can't be killed. You need to avoid them. You need to figure out how to avoid the Leviathans. That's just the way it goes. Or you need to upgrade your shit all to hell so that it can take the hit while you're exploring the area. That's the way it's always been. Park your ship in the tiny little corner of the, what do they call it, the Lost Sea, so that the Emperor Leviathan can't get you. The Ghost Leviathan can't get you. The Leviathan was different. Anyway, that's just always been the way that you're supposed to play the game. So,
sure.
Another really kind of funny piece of discourse is around the survival knife being replaced with a little axe thing, the survival multi-tool. I don't know why the devs did that, because it has the same functionality. It's just not a knife. It's an axe. It's just like a skin upgrade. People are so upset about it, though.
Really? That's so funny.
People are especially upset about the like heat cauterizing knife that like cooked the fish when you killed it. And I'm like, couldn't be me. I don't kill the fish, so that doesn't affect me at all.
Is it possible that the axe will have multifunctionality that it doesn't currently in 1.0, maybe?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I think it's just they use a
they
different
just
tool
wanted
because
a cosmetic.
They wanted to show that time has passed, and so that you don't have
Different
the same exact tool belt as
setting.
and all the tools are slightly different. They look different. The way that you use them is different. What's available is different.
I also think that's fun, as a longtime fan of the series for you, I imagine, jumping back in and not immediately knowing the use case for every tool and item in the game. Like, isn't that self-discovery part of the fun?
Yeah.
That if you knew exactly what everything did, it would kind of
also
feel odd.
It's really funny when you get the multi-tool the first time, the little, like, AI voice thing is like, yeah, we don't have the knife anymore. And then they reference the guy from the original Subnautica game, Robinson, whatever his name was.
He took it with him, or what?
He, despite protests from renowned survivor so-and-so, who really argued that we shouldn't take away the knife because everyone should have the knife, we did it anyway. It's just kind of funny.
Well, that's fun. I appreciate the
self-awareness of it. I appreciate the nods to the previous games, and they're more like Easter eggs. So to your previous question, I don't think you need to have played Subnautica or Below Zero in order to be able to appreciate or understand the narrative. But I do think it kind of adds to it, for sure. But also you can just dive in to Subnautica 2 if you wanna. And then you can always go back and play the other ones. But you should definitely play Below Zero if you haven't played Below Zero, once again.
I'm curious, as we're kind of winding down this conversation, what's your, like, top wish list of what you would like to see in 1.0 in terms of features, in terms of story content, in terms of like more biomes? What would be the ideal situation for you?
I mentioned that there are those physical like endings to where you can go, and then there's also the narrative ending where it's like we don't have more narrative for you right now. There's also, I mentioned earlier, the bio mods where you can upgrade your body. I opened up the bio bed and looked at all those slots, and at a certain point in the game, there's a hair. For most of the game, it was like, here are your two options. There's no other options right now. And then at a certain point, I unlocked something where it was like you can see all of the and this is a little spoiler for later in the early access gameplay. It shows you what you need to scan in order to unlock more bio upgrades, bio mods. Very Revenge of the Savage Planet, Journey of the Savage Planet coded little gameplay loop there. I had already done most of that, and it didn't show them. Like, it didn't populate. It showed as locked still, even though I had completed the scanning tasks. So I think they haven't finished that yet. I think it just hasn't been added in what those biomods are. So seeing what that looks like in terms of like the skill tree that you can adjust what your body can do and you have to pick and choose, that could be really interesting to see what they end up doing with that, and needing to go on these little scanny quests, Journey to the Savage Planet style, to be able to like do research to upgrade your body. There's also, I mentioned the creatures, the angel combs, these like this flora at the bottom of the ocean floor that you can use to adapt your body to the environment, and then that's what allows you to explore the next area, very video game style, not super on brand for Subnautica. I'm sure there will be more of those that you can find and heal. I hope that in the final version that gameplay loop feels less gamey and more natural, like organic. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
New areas, new biomes, sure. I think there's a lot they're going to add to the base building that they haven't added yet in terms of options, aesthetic options that you can do. I know people are going to complain if there's not a Cyclops, but I do think that they're setting up... The Cyclops is the really big ship in Subnautica that you can eventually upgrade. I think that they're setting up that the little ship... I can't remember what it's called right now. That you get, the Tadpole in Subnautica 2, that's going to be your ship. You can upgrade it. That's your ship. I would love to see this game go deeper, because a lot of people's complaints about Below Zero was that it wasn't very big and it wasn't very deep, compared to Subnautica 1, which gets up to, I think, like 1,400 meters
Okay, we're
deep.
talking literal
depth.
Nautical depth. Okay.
Literal depth, yeah. And I do not think I went below 800. I don't think I went below like 600. It's not very deep.
Okay.
There's still light at the bottom of the ocean floor. Yeah, I want to get to where it's hella dark. Then give me more caves. So hopefully we get to a little bit more of that, and I'm sure that we will. I'm sure that we'll go deep, because it's a sequel. It's bigger. It's better. It's got to also be deeper. It's Subnautica.
Cool. Well, it seems like a very promising early access start.
I'm also really interested to see where the story goes. I mentioned earlier that I wasn't sure at what point this like narrative cutoff happens in the story, like how much is left. I think that it would be cool if this game was the cutoff for about the first third of the game. But I feel like that's probably not the case. I feel like it's probably there's not quite as much of the narrative left to find. But I also feel like they're setting it up that there's a lot more. And you've seen a couple of things that I was playing with, like the scale of certain areas is just very massive. Compared to like the first game, the alien architecture that you're finding, architecture that you're finding along the ocean floor, compared to the alien architecture and the shit that you're finding in this game, is just on another level scale wise. And I think it's really interesting, and I want to learn more about these aliens as well as the human predecessors. Also, earlier in the game, they're kind of setting up like, what are you gonna do? Are you going like, what are you, the player, going to do, knowing what you know about like living on this planet? Are you going to colonize the planet for humans? Are you going to die a natural death and integrate with the like what? How are you gonna play this? I think it would be interesting if at the end of the game you are given the option to build a literal city for 20,000 people. Because the whole thing is that the ship that crashed has, in its data core, 20,000 human souls stored away. So, like, can you make it so that those humans can be printed, and then this is humanity's new home? And then just base building galore. Like, is that New Game Plus, where you're given the option to build a city for 20,000 people? Like, that could be... Or is that another, like, mindset, like the vegetarian mode thing, where, like, that's those what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna build a city for 20,000 people, or whatever. Yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes, where it goes with that. I will say that the early access build ends with a thing that's very cool.
Sweet.
Visually, and then some information that it like hits you with, and you're like, damn, that's crazy. So, yeah. Super excited for the rest of the build. I think there's the question of, like, should you play this game right now? And here's what I'll say to that. If you are a sicko like me, who really wants to see the progression from early access to final build and, like, play it all the way through now, and then play it all the way through then, again, and see what's different, absolutely go for it. This is so cool. It is so cool to have the opportunity to play an earlier version of the game, and then also to see where it goes later. It's just a little peek behind the curtain, if you're like me about this game. If you are, you've probably already played it because it's been out for about 6 weeks. If you haven't and you are a sicko, go do it. What are you waiting for? It's on Game Pass. Otherwise, if you don't really care about that and you just want to play the game when it's ready, that's fine. Go play Below Zero while you wait.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your super level of expertise on this series, and it's really fun to jump into everything. I think personally, I might be in the hold off till 1.0 camp because I'm definitely interested, but I kind of would like to play like the best version of the game. I would love to check out
the co-op and multiplayer together. That'd be cool. That could be neat. That really fun, especially, and we could even do that like now at this point where I'm just like exploring and crafting, just like give you a little tour of my base, all this stuff. You can help me craft.
Do you know what like progression wise how that functions?
One thing I do want to add about resource abundance in this game, like I thought Below Zero did a great job of. I wasn't like struggling for hours and hours to find the resources I needed to craft something, but there were moments where I was like, oh, I need more lithium, and I gotta go all the way over there to get it, and there's not much of it left. There's so many resources in Subnautica 2, just all over the place. It almost feels too easy.
Do you know, sorry, doubling back to the co-op thing, do you know like progression wise how that works? If it's like shared world, or you hop into my game and help me out, or like we're progressing the same story? Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's you have the world and people can join you and help you craft and collect, and
cool.
It sounds from what I've been reading about like the patch notes and stuff that sharing resources between players can be kind of convoluted.
I see.
But there's also like on the little tadpole ship when you're piloting it, there's also a little handle on each side so that your friends can hold on and just go wee while you're piloting the ship through the water.
Cool.
Which I think is fun. Yeah, I think I would love to check out the co-op and just see how it feels and how it works.
Yeah, I'd be down.
I'm really glad that this game is fully and completely playable and enjoyable, single player only, because when they first announced that it was going to be more co-op heavy, I was really worried.
I had a feeling that just because like they built the franchise on a single player basis.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they struck the right balance of great single player, fun to play with friends for folks who want to.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I think that brings us to a close for this episode. We are setting our status to away until next time. But before then, I'm asking you to do 4 things for us, listeners. Give us a follow on BlueSky at Crossplay Convos. Subscribe to us on YouTube, also at Crossplay Convos, to get the beautiful video version of the show. Send this podcast to a friend, because that's how people hear about podcasts. And of course, give us a review on your podcasting platform of choice, because it really truly does help. And with that, it's summertime. Close your blinds and play some video games.
Yay!
Bye, y'all.